Matthew, here we go.
Back to Matthew. So let's recap. So we had our first verse, which kind of led us to the problem of that first verse kind of obviates the necessity of the next verse. And then you note that anyone who comes from Abraham, David goes to that line and vice versa. And so much so that the actual book of Matthew, what we're going to read now, is the next section of verses that literally points to what you said, that it's not like a different lineage comes across. It's that all of a sudden we're going to go and now say, Abraham went to Jesse. Okay, so we'll have you read the verses and then we'll analyze. So I think we're
Yes.
at six and a half.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this yesterday, and so this is a great point you make, right? So it starts with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, comes to Judah and his brothers, and then it jumps from there, right? Like or Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Judah and his brothers. It has Perez, and then after Perez it jumps, right? That's where it jumps, like it jumps a couple generations to go to, or it's not. Is that?
Well, I was just noting
Yeah.
that from my perspective, it looks like there's a lot of cut and pasting going on. They're not trying to create a claim as much as link it conclusively to the biblical text. So it links it to Genesis and
Ruth.
and through the rest of it to the 4th chapter of the book of Ruth.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to see in the next verses, is the same thing. Okay, so go for it.
And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah, and Solomon the father of Rehoboam, and Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and of Abijah the father of Asaph, and Asaph the father of Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat the father of Joram, and Joram the father of
I could listen to this all day. This is great.
Uzziah the father of Jotham, and Jotham the father of Ahaz, and Ahaz the father of Hezekiah, and Hezekiah the father of Manasseh, Manasseh the father of Amos, Amos the father of Josiah, and Josiah the father of Jeconiah and his brothers at the time of the deportation to Babylon. Wow.
Okay.
It's the first time I've read this completely. Okay.
If you want to call that reading. That's good.
It's some foreign language. So.
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of interesting things that are happening here. So let's just point out the interesting things. So the most interesting thing right here of all is I'd say Uriah. So David became the father of Shlomo, of Solomon, whose mother had been the wife of Uriah. So no matter what you're going to do, this is like almost like an unjustified slap in the face. This is a pretty tough thing. No one denies the biblical text that Solomon's mother was originally married to Uriah. It does seem, according to the read of the text, David sinned in certain ways, but no one thinks that Solomon's mother is not David's wife then. You might not like it. So if you're going to present a genealogy, why would you throw this slap in the face here? Why would you recall David's sin when your ultimate goal is only to make sure to justify the Davidic line and the genealogies?
Could it also be that his secondary goal was to also show forgiveness, to show that all kinds of people are part of the genealogy? Yes, he sinned, and it's very obvious. It's very obvious, and as you said, yeah, there was no need to put a slap. There was no need to mention this over here. But I'm raising a question. Could it also be that what Matthew was trying to say is that the genealogy has all kinds of people, and if forgiveness is if forgiveness is what Christ came to offer, then is he trying to portray a picture where forgiveness was weaved into the genealogy of Christ?
So that's a really interesting answer. So here's what I would say the two problems of the answer. There are some literally evil people on this list of kings. They're literally like killers on this list. When you look at
it depends on what you mean by evil. So
I mean evil kings of Israel that the Bible says they were evil. Like evil, bad people.
Yeah.
There's some evil kings on this. We have Manasseh. Look down the list.
Who are they? Who are
I
they?
think Josiah and Hizkiah are known as good ones. Manasseh. I'm saying like if you read through book
Book
of
of
Kings and the
a
book
name.
of Chronicles, you would know that some of these guys are bad guys. So to just say that they're sinners on the list wouldn't be good enough. And I'll also point out that it's not actually saying that David was forgiven or that he sinned in this situation. It could have said David who sinned with the wife of Uriah. All it's saying is a fun fact that when we look at the biblical record and the historical record, you should know that Uriah's wife, who fathered Shlomo, who eventually became David's wife, there's still a remnant, a hint of the relation to Uriah in that relationship. There's a hint of that sin here. So again, to just say that sins are forgiven, I would have trouble saying that because again, there's just some horrible people here.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say, right? Yes, the horrible people they did, maybe the kings in the time of Amos, right? Manasseh, they did awful things and they did evil things, and that's why Amos speaks about justice, social justice, love the Lord your God. But what David did, right? It's a different kind of thing, adultery and then killing. I'm not saying again, sin is sin no matter what it is, but what he did as a king is something different, right? But I mean different. Um, it's and I don't think at least when I read this, my one takeaway is forgiveness is weaved into this that all kinds. So the way I look at this is to be the Messiah's lineage or his ancestors were all kinds of people. Some were good, some were very shady, and some were horrible. And maybe
I
is that
feel
is
like
that
you got to read about I think Yirmiyahu, Sefer Jeremiah in the 15th chapter, and other places where it talks about Manasseh, who was one of the kings of Judah.
yeah.
Where I think in the Malachim Bey, the second book of Malachim of Kings, the 21st chapter, and in 2 Chronicles, like somewhere around the 30th chapter, it also talks about like how bad Manasseh is. Um, he like 4 destructions are promised upon Israel because of him.
Hmm.
Um, he ruled for like 55 years or so, and he's just viewed as one of the bad guys. So just to say that if you're going to throw out some bad guys and being forgiven, you kind of would do this. It just looks like the whole thing is just a regular list, and then it has that one extra thing in, like for example, idolatry, bad, right? Um,
But here's the thing, right? So
he
was
did idolatry.
was Matthew
He
trying to
worshipped
say?
Asherah.
Yeah.
He did all the cultic kind of things that were bad.
Was Matthew trying to say that Joseph had Solomon before he was married? So yes, at some point he married. So it's after she became pregnant. That's when he married her. So after Uriah was killed in the war, right? But then by this time she was already pregnant. So was that what I mean? Is that the reason?
That wasn't Solomon though, right? That was the kid that came from that was not Solomon.
Oh that kid passed away. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I feel like there's a lot of options. You want to argue that maybe it's about there is forgiveness. I would say it's a tough read to say. I would say that there is this idea of ignoble roots in specifically Christendom, where just like the Pope kisses dirty feet, or
Hmm.
the idea of kind of doing for the downtrodden. And I think like to show that even David had like some, even though we're trying to highlight David the king, we still want to show like some ignoble roots for Jesus, and
Hmm.
that contradiction that a Christian is supposed to feel between having like the perfect worship alongside with the bottom, like feel for the widow, feel for the orphan, feel for the poor, feel for the. So I feel like it could be like even at the highest of highs of the messianic scion, we still throw out or throw in this one negative thing. I would say I'd believe something along the lines of that. But again, no matter what, it's a little bit out of place. That's one thing I think is worthwhile for us to note, the out of placeness of it. As I look down the line, as you can see, this is obviously the lines of Judah kings, not Israelite kings. And the only other thing that I think also is at least noteworthy
Mhm.
um, is, as you know, Josiah became the father of Jehoniah and his brothers at the time of the Babylonian exile. So, as you may know, the once you got to that part of history, they no longer kind of. It wasn't that they passed the son because the sons didn't last long enough. So after Josiah, Jehoiakim, Jehoaz, and Sidkiyahu were all brothers. They eventually kind of all took over because they didn't last very long as kings. So again, what we're seeing is this is not an example of the genealogy here. This is also a break of the genealogy. This is a biblical history that's cut and pasted from Chronicles and Kings 2. So again,
Now
no.
that I think, now that I think about this, I have a question for you, right? So David had kids. David had children from. So David was married to Saul's daughter, and I think he had kids from them too, right? But
David
was
probably had a multiple amount of kids from multiple amount of women.
yeah. So
David, literally the one time he didn't have kids of a woman is when he was old and lying in bed, and that's noteworthy. It's like, oh, that's the one he didn't have kids with.
no, he had kids with her, right? That's Solomon. So I'm just I had not thought about this, but I'm intrigued. Could it also be he's trying to highlight that David had multiple wives, and of all those kids he had, maybe with her? I mean, um, because David was married to Solomon's daughter, right?
Uh,
No, sorry, Saul's daughter, the daughter
yeah,
of
but
Saul.
you see Saul, like Israelite history and Saul history
Hmm.
is ignored here. It's
Yeah,
not part of the line. You don't hear about Ishbosheth or other people. You
yeah.
don't hear about the wars because that's not important for geology. That's why it's really interesting. These 2 points, up to the exile we're going up to, are really important. That it mentions Uriah's wife, and it mentions the fact that these sons, who were not the genealogy line, but the biblical history line of here were kings. So
Hmm.
it's also noteworthy how I would say that normally that these people would not be included,
Hmm.
but they are. Okay, Isaac.
We have to move faster. This is very too damn slow. Seriously, we've got to pick up
This
pace.
is how this is how you're. We're not even going so far as deep as we could go, but this is kind of how far. This is the speed, man.